Let's think about what makes a place different and special in the low season and how we use that as a way of drawing new resources to create products and experiences that will be exciting to your potential customers. I think very often we take for granted what's there. So let's just take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about what are the assets that are available to you in low season that so far you may have taken for granted. Let's think more deeply about what's different about the natural environment. What's the uniqueness that you've got here? What are the colors? What are the smells? What are the sounds? How can we play with those things as a way of improving the uniqueness or the what's exciting about your location? How do we play with light? How do we use the fact that you know it's darker, that the fact that it's colder? How do we consider also what's happening in nature around us that we don't normally think of? What are the migratory birds or the animals that will be there? What are the flowers that we kind of find in summer? What looks different about your surroundings? Also, let's think also about the emotions that consumers can think of or can feel in winter or in quieter environments that much more still. So let's show the link to the customers about what does it mean to brave the rain or to the how do we make those sounds become part of the adventure? How do we make the contrast of cold outdoors with then reinforcing that sense of being cozy and something serene when we come back in? How do we work with the idea of fireplaces, hot mugs of tea, blankets, and that sense of contrast of day and light as a way of creating powerful emotions? How do we look at access? What are the things that are not available, for example, during summer, either because they're crowded or simply because you can't go there? So the opportunity, for example, of creating walks along the beach with dogs, where in the winter those beaches would be closed. What would be the opportunities to engage with park rangers, or what would be the opportunity to have a sneak preview at what's happening in a museum, or in locations where in some of this it's just going to be too crowded for you to get that personal experience. How does it also work with time? How is time different in winter? Okay, what can we do when things are slower? What's the beauty about accessing a great secondhand bookshop or going to local cafes and having opportunities to have the place to yourself, or enjoying a comfy sofa, or the activities such as learning how to cook your own lunch with a chef, or like the fact you've got access to people that wouldn't be there available for you in at different times of year. And also what are the specific events that are running both locally as well as things that you could create yourself that that you can work with at this time of year. So we could do this almost like a way of creating a catalog of opportunities. And I think this is what we saw, for example, in this regional national park. They capitalized on the wintering gray cranes, and they looked at the way in which they could use their knowledge on this particular phenomenon to work with accommodations, with restaurant owners, with different tour guides, and they created a charter with nature associations, and they worked together to preserve the conditions that those birds enjoy the best, but at the same time they provided training for many of those tourism businesses and activities for visitors to be able to enjoy this beauty of this migration. And you don't have to just focus on that. There's other ways of doing it. So, in Port de Salines, what they did is they created specific outings for residents to an island nearby, and they did it in a way that those residents could become protagonists of creating these inventories of biodiversity. They made it with shorter format, and they had to be much more fun. It was an educational activity. They had to be shorter simply because it's colder, okay? But that doesn't mean we can't just then create activities that are targeted to the particular needs of those groups at that point in time. And what we see about creating these opportunities for ready activities from November to March is that you'll have to design them differently. Okay, you'll have to combine indoor and outdoor spaces, because even if it's bad weather, we can cope with some bad weather, but not constantly. So we need to be able to say, okay, it'll be cold from space A to B, but when from A and then when you get to B, there will be opportunities for warming up. There will be things that you can do there. Okay. So provide also suitable equipment. We've seen an increase in the number of properties that basically say welly boots included. When you come to our property, you can borrow equipment, you can borrow umbrellas, you can borrow wellies in case you don't have it with you, or we'll give you access to equipment that you'll be able to use to actually enjoy that outdoor weather a lot better. I understand that's more complicated when you've got health restrictions around. Okay, guarantee some weatherproof access as well. Guarantee things that you can do when the weather's bad, but also provide activities that are not weather dependent, or find ways in which you can encourage things that will be kind of coping with that weather and enjoying the extreme weather is going to be part of the activity in itself. And then train your staff to actually build those relationships with your customers to increase that repeat business, and make sure that your staff know what there is to do in low season. There's nothing worse than going to a tourist attraction or going to a tourism business and asking them, what is there to do here in winter? And you almost get laughed at and say, I don't know why you bothered coming here in December. It's not worth coming here until at least May. Right? So we have to find ways that people are aware of what is good about our area this time of year. We've seen this, for example, in places like the RHS Wisley, these fantastic gardens that were upgraded, and the gardening program, their events, the way in which they looked at visitor flows, the way in which they designed footpaths, all of this was designed so in winter we could have better facilities. So even the planting in the garden is designed, so for example, in the photo here on the left-hand side, you've got midwinter fires, looking beautiful in winter. In summer, they're not very attractive, but in winter they are. Right, and so in summer you've got different plants that come through that compensate for then what was beautiful in winter instead. So you even down to then saying, I redesign my infrastructure differently. I improve the paths so they can be hardened in winter, so they're not muddy. I can provide lighting around the footpath, so in winter people with that will feel uncomfortable walking in the middle of nature will actually be able to see where they're going, and this allows us to target people from different age groups. And what they did, for example, in RHS, besides then creating some indoor areas, is they encourage winter Christmas, carol singers, for example, to come to their gardens, and they were from local communities. They gave them tickets for free to come and sing carols. They provided opportunities for buying teas and coffees and hot chocolates nearby where the carol singers were. And rather than putting them at the entrance of the park, what they did is they put them at the furthest most point. So we would use the sound as a way of getting people to walk throughout the entire garden, as opposed to just staying in one cozy area. So you can use sound, you can use activities, you can use events, you can use the design of your location, all of it to redesign experiences that makes sure that people actually do want to come in winter, and in our case, from what we're saying here, in winter, and also particularly in the evening areas of the winter. It's important that we also consider what's stopping people from buying our products, and that we don't underestimate customers' fears. So for example, in this particular events farm, what they did is they created specific low season wedding packages to change the perception of winter weddings. They created that package that basically showed how the place is going to be run, how much more beautiful it can be in a location like this in winter, but also how basically you're not going to get stuck because it's going to be snowy, because we've got equipment that will allow you to actually get here, enjoy the experience, and not feel like you will not be able to leave afterwards. So it's important that therefore you research what's in your local area. You have to create a list of activities that are available at this time of year, whether it's mushroom picking, whether it's truffle finding, whether it's drying meat, whatever is going to be part of the local economy, that also creates a sense of place and something that is unique about your location. Identify local partners you can work with. You don't have to provide these activities. You just need to find local businesses that will be doing it and will gladly benefit from that trade. So if you're an accommodation provider and then you do some of this cross-selling, or if you're a tourist attraction, a tourist office, and you're able to then say, these are the list of interesting things that happen specifically in winter, we have to find a way of making winter be even more exciting than summer, so people actually want to specifically come when it's low season. So please create a list of things to do. List of things to do when it rains, list of things to do when it's cold, list of things to do when it's dark, when it's wet, all these things. And I know that when I've spoken to businesses, they've basically initially tell me there is nothing to do. And with 10, 15, 20 minutes of brainstorming, we've come up with some actually a number of exciting things that we can do at this time of year. And you then have to present all this in a way that inspires your guests. We have to create an environment where your businesses and your visitors basically say, I'm excited about doing this, and I'm going to be given things that make it easy for me as a consumer to discover and to experience many of these things that make your place exciting in the winter. So we've seen these with examples like this one from Corsica, where they specifically work with local resources and with local suppliers in the winter to be able to showcase what is different about this time of year, where they do activities around tasting local honey, excursions in the forest, discovery of orchards, visiting local farmers, providing botanical experiences, giving kind of outdoor kits for families, creating sensory games. You'll say that's an awful lot of work, but actually small tourist offices in your locality can do this, and this can be shared by a variety of businesses. It doesn't just have to be you that creates all of them. And you can look at ways in which you can collaborate with other businesses nearby you to create those experiences. So as a task at this moment, I think it's important that we consider what are the low season resources that are available to you as an organization, whether you are a DMO or whether you are an actual activity provider or an accommodation provider. Reflect on your personal interpretation of what does autumn and winter really mean for you, and translate your thoughts into images. How will we visualize what it means late autumn and winter? And then research how do we materialize those emotions, those feelings into specific events. Events here loosely, okay? Things that only happen between November and March in your area. So I would like to challenge you to identify 3 things that happen in nature in terms of fauna and flora that only happen in winter that we think could create something different. I challenge you to find 3 regional specialities, whether it's either on historical heritage, in kind of the savoir-faire, that we can have these very season-specific gastronomic specialities that we can find at this time of year. And consider also the cultural experiences that we've got right now. What activities are happening right now? What community event, what sporting event, what entertainment is happening only at this time of year? And how do we put all of these into a calendar? Also consider how do we turn negatives into positives. Classify your winter thoughts and images into positive and negative, and for the positive ones, think of how we'll promote those, but particularly for the negative ones, think, how do I turn that round into a dare for customers, or into an actual possibility of contrasting that moment that could be negative into then the reward for having got through that into a positive that will come afterwards.